Hello and welcome to the Gwladys Beat Podcast. After the optimism last week of getting to an FA Cup quarter final, Everton managed to bring us straight back down to earth again last night in typical Everton fashion with a nice 5-0 win. The optimism lasted all of about 15 minutes before all of that was dashed. So to pick the bones of last night and look forward to the rest of the season with typical Evertonian pessimism is Andrea McGrady and Dylan Keogh. How are you doing?
Okay.
Sam, thank you.
Well, that's better than I was doing last night. So we'll start with last night. There's not many places to start really, is there, aside from the disappointment and how it came about. I mean, I think we started quite well. I think first 10, 15 minutes we pressed them, we worried them a little bit, and then they just realised that our back line was playing on the halfway line and neither of them could actually run, and that sort of was the way the things went for the rest of the game, basically. So where do you think it all went to pieces after a fairly promising 15 minutes?
Go ahead, Andy.
Oh, cheers, Don. Thanks. In at the deep end. Where did it go wrong? It's just silly mistakes again. Just, we've had them so often, like Hull away, wasn't it? Hull away, Wolves away, just silly mistakes. I actually thought it was a good goal from Harry Kane at first, and then I just realised, what a terrible own goal, to concede, and then, everything was just wrong. It was a typical away performance. We didn't threaten. We got no creativity. We don't think we had a shot on goal, did we again? We just passive. We were losing every 50-50. And at some stage we were even losing 60-40s in our favour. We were closing players down, and we had 3 surrounding them, and they were still getting out of it, the Tottenham players. And I don't even think they really got out of second gear to beat us. Richarlison stunk the place out. I saw one little burst of speed from Dominic. I don't think he won any header.
Dominic,
Anthony Gordon.
First name term.
Yeah.
Not for long.
Anthony Gordon it was the only one who come out with a bit of credit, I think, for the whole game. I don't know what Jordan Pickford was doing for one of the goals. Must have been, out celebrating his birthday yesterday. So
yeah, I think I missed the first goal, and I saw that it was an oggy. But like you said, Andy, when I saw it myself, it looked like a beast of a goal from Kane. But Jamie Carragher said it all. We've got a championship defence. I mean, Michael Keane's mistakes constantly. Holgate's positioning, he never sprints back. He jogs back. Seamus, love him to bits. And to be fair, he's been one of our better performers, but he hasn't got the pace that he used to. He doesn't have Holgate supporting him. It's where do you start? The big thing that I want to say is Frank Lampard is aging by the day, and I feel sorry for him.
I mean, we do have a tendency to do that with managers, don't we? And I think fans, I'm only 12 myself, and but yeah, it's as you say, Andy. It was. I think the first 2 goals in particular were just individual errors, weren't they? And I
avoidable.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the second. I sort of lost Kieran and count, but where Mason Holgate runs out of defence to close down Kulusevski, where it wasn't really a great deal of danger until you leave that massive gaping hole for Son to run into, and it's just that carelessness. I mean, Holgate does my head in, to be honest, because it's just mindless. As a centre half, you need that level of discipline. I think Keane's got the discipline. He's just not a very good footballer. Whereas I think Holgate's got aspects of being a good player, but is just absolutely mindless and doesn't know how to play the position. And, between the 2 of them, as you said, Dawn, it is a championship defence. And I think that's becoming more and more evident the more they play together. I know you're not a massive Godfrey fan, but what you do to have somebody with any sort of physical attribute or, ability in that centre of defence yesterday, I think that would have made the difference, especially if you're trying to play a high line.
Yeah, let me just clarify my issues with Godfrey. He's fast. He's fast. He's physical. He's got the right attitude. He's got zero positional sense, and he's all over the shop. And if he's got someone who's a good leader at the back, he'll be a good centre half. But at the moment, we don't have anyone who can sort of educate him. And I think like Michael Keane's one of our better centre halves, which is quite scary because if you look at was it the third goal, I'm a bit like you, Mike. I'd lost count of apart from the first goal. It wasn't Harry Kane over him. And then Harry Kane holds him down, then gets past him, and you think, hold on a second, where's his aggression as a defender? If someone's done that to me, I want to flatten him. And then he just runs on, and Harry Kane's not fast.
Yeah.
And Holgate's too busy, like, checking he's still got his earring in the middle.
One of the girls I go to the game with, she thinks Godfrey's definitely not a centre half. She thinks he's a left back. End of story. I think if you could combine Holgate and Keane and have Holgate's aggression and Keane's probably bit of calmness sometimes and football and brain maybe, but as an individual, I think Holgate thinks he's far better than he actually is. And as that goal, you just want. I like my centre halves to be aggressive and be that like tight. What Holgate was doing in the first 10-15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you say, the two of them are just lacking so much. And I saw Holgate come out after about 2 games of Frank Lampard being there, saying, "Oh, he's breathed fresh life into my Everton career, and he's given me a new start." And I thought, you've had probably a decent 90 minutes of football. That doesn't make you a decent centre half as things go. The jury's still out on pretty much the whole of that back line. And one of the things that really, sort of got to me yesterday, and I know it's very soon to be even passing comments on Patterson and Mikalenko, but I looked at John Joe Kenny on that left-hand side, and it's not John Joe Kenny's fault because he's probably not good enough in general, and he's also not a left back. But I just thought this system suits Luca Dean down to the ground, playing a slightly higher formation, someone who's bedded into the Premiership, proven he can get assists as an attacking fullback. We're playing with width and sort of high fullbacks, and John Joe Kenny's getting it on his right foot, having to come back inside to Michael Keane constantly because we haven't got a left-sided fullback. And Mikalenko might be good enough, but he's 22, coming in from Ukraine. His head must be all over the place, with what's going on. So it's not really the time to be throwing him into a relegation scrap where things could start getting a bit nasty. But that, to me, sums up the running of the club over the last few years. The fact that you're selling arguably one of your most proven, better players in the squad a couple of days before you sack the person who wants rid of him. That we said at the time that was a mistake, and I haven't seen anything since which suggests otherwise, to be honest.
Yeah, well, you look on the back of that and you think Seamus Coleman's been on that slippy slope for, 3 years, possibly 4 years. And, Baines as another good player for us, we got to phase him out. And Seamus, everyone's slagging him off, and it's not his fault. It's not his fault he's at that age. It's not his fault that we brought in a young fullback who might be good in the future. But let's be honest, at Rangers, he couldn't get rid of their captain because he was the right back as well. So how was he going to do that with Seamus in the Premier League? And then, like you say, we get rid of Luca Dean, who's proven, and it's just shocking how the club's been. Yeah, it's just shocking how the club's been run. Really.
The most Everton thing ever, isn't it? So, we've been after a right back for, as you say, 3 years. We go and sign one who's meant to be he's a Scottish international. He's meant to be, and then he hasn't even had a look in. He even got dragged off against Boreham Wood. I know that was tactical, but
yeah. I mean, it's hard, isn't it? Because I think the rest of the team. I look at midfield who started yesterday, and I don't think they had a great game. Neither did the front three. I think Anthony Gordon played well, but obviously one man doesn't really make a team. And at the end of the day, you say he played well. He showed some good touches, but the reason he played well was essentially because he put in a bit of effort throughout the game. He got a foot in, he pressed and actually won the ball, intercepted. It wasn't he looked like the second coming or anything. He just had quite a solid game and kept possession of the ball when he had it. So all in all, I think you look at that midfield and front three, arguably front four with Damari Gray coming in, and you'd say that's not a team that should be fighting relegation. But when you get to the back four, I just don't see which one of them fills me with confidence in terms of the rest of the season. I don't see what combination you can put them in whereby we just stay completely away from trouble. So I think that's the biggest problem. And as you said, Andy, no shots on target again for the second away match after Southampton. So although we look at the midfield and the attack and say, they're probably not the reason why, there's got to be a reason why you're not having any shots on target away from home.
But Calvert-Lewin, I mean, he's either not fit, not interested, but both. Like, he's not worthy of a shirt right now for me. Like, I know Richarlison's not the best down the middle, but he'd be a better threat than him. Stick a Wobie or Gray in behind or whatever, but he shouldn't be getting a shirt because he's just having zero impact.
Yeah,
It's almost
around, is he?
It's almost as if he's come back and we're just looking to someone to save the season. It's like, we haven't had him for a while, and that's been the reason why we haven't got a centre forward. But he's not going to come back, and he's never been particularly prolific except for that 6-month period under Ancelotti. So pinning all your hopes on him, I don't think is the answer, is it? And we're probably going to have to make the decision at some point this season whether you stick with Richarlison or Calvert-Lewin, because we're not going to keep both of them in the summer, I don't think. So do you put your eggs in one basket and just hope you keep one of them, or?
I think they'll both go. I think Richarlison on his day is too good for us. I think DCL thinks he's better than what he is, and I think really they should be showing it now. The big problem that our squad has had for donkey's years, even under Martinez, is having players with a bit of heart. And you look at them, you remember, like, I mentioned this before, you remember under Joe Royle, and it was like the dogs of war. If a crisp packet comes across the pitch, you take it out. Like, you've got Anthony Gordon who fights for everything. You've got Alan who will, and probably Godfrey, but how many others? Like Corey probably, but how many others actually put it in? Sorry, Seamus Coleman. But the rest of them hide. The rest of them aren't interested. And for us to get out of this mess, we need more heart, whoever's going to give it to us, even if that's Rondon.
Oh, you've done it now. You've said the R word.
I know, yeah. Sorry.
But yeah, no, that's the most worrying thing, isn't it? Because we've had worse teams than this in the past, far worse teams technically, but you always had that underlying feeling that they'd scrap the way out of it, or if it came down to it, we'd be okay. In the Moyes, when we had a couple of bad seasons, and obviously early in the 90s, we had dogs of war, sort of that spirit of people who get stuck in. I think now, if you put if we were playing Burnley, for example, I know you'd fancy to come out on top in a tit for tat. So, and it wouldn't be us, unfortunately. But hopefully we can football our way out of trouble. So we'll move on to the man who might teach us how to do that, Frank Lampard. So obviously he's come in. I think initially, at least, had a really positive impact. Whether that was just sort of elation that we didn't employ Vitor Pereira and got rid of he who shall not be named. Whether it was just sort of the lesser of two evils, or everyone was actually happy to have Frank Lampard, time will tell. But I think everyone's quite happy to give him time, let him implement his ideas. But obviously, all with the positive sentiment he's built up, it doesn't take many performances last night for opinions to change. So, Dawn, I'll come to you first in terms of what do you think he's done positive? What do you think he's done negative? How do you think his time at the club's been so far?
Oh, he's just nice, isn't he? Nice. He's definitely got a few more grey hairs than he had when he started with us. Excuse me. I think I like him. I'm glad we picked him. I think he's he now knows what a big job it is. I think he knew it was a big job, and now he realises that it's much bigger, and the problems are more ingrained in the club. I think if we get out the mess that we're in, he's the right man for the job, because to change the culture, to change the mentality of the players. Because one of the first things he said on interview was, and everyone before, even Ancelotti, would say, basically, the crowd have got to get us up for it. Well, why? They're paid that X amount a week, and what he says is it's a bit of both. They've got to give us a reason to get up for it, and then we sort of work together. I like a lot of things that he said. I like the way he thinks about football. I do think he's the right man, but it's really difficult at the moment because he's getting the tune out of us at home, but away games, but we're getting nothing. And there's only so much the man can do. He's only been there a few weeks, hasn't he? Not sure what you think.
I saw a report on Twitter today from someone from TalkSport actually asking him to be sacked. You know what I mean? Come on, flipping heck. He's been here a few weeks. He wasn't my first choice, I must admit. But again, like most people, I think he was the best out of a bad bunch to go for. I think his positives, I mean, he's got instant respect, I think, from the players, just because how good a player he was, and you know what he's won in the game. And you listen to Ancelotti, who's actually said, you know, he's going to make a great manager, and he's brought a fantastic team with him as well. Paul Clements is well thought of in football circles as well. So, and if he can, I know you can't instill it in a lot of people, but if he can kind of help, or he knows how to win games, he should do at the level he's played. He should know how to win games and what to do, and so, you know, he'll do for me. So, and he should be able to help us prepare for games properly and things like that. So,
yeah,
bringing that to Gordon as well. You know, apparently he's well thought of in the England setup. So,
yeah, I think as you say, the sort of respect that he gets from players, obviously it's not sort of someone that we should be mentioning today, but you know, Steven Gerrard springs to mind in the way that you can approach players like Philip Coutinho and get them in. Not that I think that's the attitude we should be adopting, but I've seen names thrown about for the summer, like, you know, Billy Gilmore, Armando Broja, those players that he worked with closely at Chelsea through the youth system and things like that. Those are the players that really can come in, you know, for relatively cheap, like Tino Livramento's done this season, and save you millions further down the line. So I think he has that respect, doesn't he, from a youth setup through to the first team players who have watched them growing up and things like that. So I'm completely behind him, regardless of although we don't want to go down. You know, if that does end up happening, I think these players have let that many managers down now, time and time again, that you've got to stick with. You know, somebody's got to be there throughout, and at the moment it seems to be the players who are getting off scot-free. I think for a change, you need the manager to stay there and build a team of people who aren't going to let him down. But, you know, you can't really account for the individual errors that we made at the start of yesterday. We came out, tried to attack them, tried to take the game to them, because we probably, as they said in commentary, we expected them to be a little bit fragile from the Middlesbrough FA Cup game. So we obviously tried to, you know, get the crowd a bit aggressive and try and win the ball high up. But when you've got those sort of mistakes being made in the first 20 minutes, it just completely paralyzes anything you're trying to do, doesn't it, in terms of a game plan? So, yeah, I think the feeling around the club improved. And I think the style of football is better than what, you know, we've had under the last few managers. I think we just need a little bit, maybe more pragmatism in those sort of games, rather than just completely going on the front foot and playing such a high line. I don't know what you think about the style of football, Dawn.
Well, anything's better than what we had under the other.
Yeah.
I'm not going to mention, you know, that's depressing. Some of those decisions, what? Like, I think it's really hard because he's been there for such a short period of time, and he hasn't got the tools, if you like, at his disposal to play the football that he wants to. And even when he does, like at home, we're getting a tune out of them. Away, we're not. So maybe we do need to adjust what we're doing away from home. We need to do something different, whether it's personnel or the system. But like, you can't just rely on the crowd at home. But if we are that bad away from home, then maybe he needs to think about a plan B. But just touching on his support team, I was made up against City when Ashley Cole went up to the referee and had murder afterwards, because, I mean, let's be honest, a team that's going to get relegated or survive, it's based on not just your quality on the pitch, it's the luck as well. And everyone in the world, apart from Chris Kavanagh, thought that was a handball, and they've apologised. But if that is the difference between us staying up and going down, like, that's not okay. But it's refreshing to see someone like Ashley Cole go over and kick off about it, because everyone just goes, oh, like, it doesn't matter, let's go on to the next game.
Going on, like, I don't know, Howard Kendall always used to say you need a bit of luck to be a manager, you know. So I think, yeah. But going after the way we play, I think, you know, he's got a better win percentage already, hasn't he, than the previous guy? So I know it's not difficult, like, but you know, that'll do for me. So I'm not even thinking about next season, to be honest. Yeah, I just want this one to be over, and just for us to be safe.
Yeah. Well, we've touched on there. Obviously, the away form has been an issue for as long as I can remember, pretty much. You know, like, for the last 6 or 7 years, we've been awful away from home, aside from when there was no fans there. So that's not something that I can imagine is going to be addressed overnight. We've got some great but long-suffering fans making all those journeys across the country, and you know, you just hope that, hopefully Frank, but someone can get a tune out of the players away from home, so that the journeys and all those cans drunk on the road aren't a waste. But
that's the mad thing, though, isn't it? That when you go to away games, and at the start of the game, before you get completely depressed by what's happening on the pitch, our fans are really loud. Our fans are dead supportive, really loud, and then something happens, and we'll still support for a bit. But then, you know, when 5 go in, like, everyone loses their head, goes to the bar, and gets absolutely smashed off the face. That's why we're probably we've got the biggest amount of AA members in the country, which I know we've said before. But it's mad, isn't it? Because, you know, like, all being season ticket holders and stuff, seeing what we've seen at home, even against Manchester City the other week, and you sort of go, like, we should have got a point out of that. And they're the best team in the Premier League. And then we go away, and that happens against Spurs, who've been on a run of bad form. It's just crazy. The away form is crazy.
yeah, it's like 2 different teams, isn't it? But thankfully, we've got 8 games of our remaining 13 at home, and we kicked that off with one of the biggest fortnights in the club's history, possibly. Over the next 2 weeks, we've got 2 home games against Wolves and Newcastle, followed up by the away game in the quarterfinal of the FA Cup. I know the FA Cup can take a bit of a backseat at the moment, because, you know, that's almost a luxury we can't afford to enjoy at the moment. But looking forward to the next 2 games, just how important are those games? Obviously, with, you know, Wolves sitting in 8th with 3 losses on the bounce, but they play Watford on Thursday night, which they'll hopefully end that run of defeats in, to be honest, for our own good. And then Newcastle, who, despite looking like they were nailed on to be involved in a relegation scrap, are unbeaten in 7 with 5 wins in the last 7 games. So you look at that, and you know, although we're saying the big games, that they're by no means easy games. So Andy, what do you see from those 2 games? How important are these in the course of our season?
Well, the importance is you don't need to explain that, do you? But I mean, I can't see us getting 6 points. You know, we've won how many games all season? 6 games all season. We're not going to win 2 on the bounce. Seriously, doesn't happen. If you were going to win 1, you'd like to win the Newcastle one, obviously, but you can't be getting dragged into that bottom 3, because as soon as you get into that bottom 3, then, you know, things start panicking even more, then, don't they? And, you know, your strikers start snatching at chances and things like that. Then that's when it really does start panicking. So, but I don't know what else to say about it. I'm just desperate to get the points. But you know, I wouldn't play Michael Keane at the weekend. I really wouldn't. I'd start with Branthwaite, and I'd like to see Dele Alli get in there at some stage, because he's about the only one who can create anything. He's had one pass into Rondon, which was the pass of the season against Leeds, wasn't it? And I think the pass for Richarlison against Man City, which caused our non-penalty, pass of the season again. So he's our only creative midfielder. So I want to see him in. But as for fullbacks, again, I don't know about that. I'd like to see Patterson in. But I think Mikalenko is probably just a little bit, you know, there's a lot going on for the lad, isn't there, at the minute? So
I think you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, aren't you? Because if you're saying Patterson, yeah, he couldn't shift the captain from Rangers, and the captain from Rangers wouldn't get a game in the Premier League. And we've got Seamus Coleman, yeah, he's knocking on. He's not as fast as he was, and some games he's terrible. But I think generally this season he's been all right. But last night, Holgate didn't support him. He didn't fill in behind him. He didn't cover him. He just left him hanging out there on his own. And I think, I don't know what Lampard thinks, but it's a risk, isn't it? If you take the captain out and you put this young lad in who couldn't start at Rangers, start him in the Premier League in a must-win game. It's a difficult one. I agree about Michael Keane, but overall, if we don't get 6 points from the next possible 6 points, we are in serious trouble. Serious trouble.
I mean, we said that against Villa the other week, didn't we? We said this is a must-win game. We've got to win this, but that didn't happen.
But these are though. You look at that. We are literally fourth from bottom.
I saw today that Wolves. I mean, Wolves are going to have a massive say in our season because they play us, they play Watford, they play Leeds, Newcastle, Norwich, and Burnley in their remaining games. So, I mean, you know, we've sort of got to keep Wolves honest, to be honest. You know, if we can keep them in the fight, yeah, we've got to take points off them. But so the points against Wolves, although you'd probably say Newcastle are the easier team to beat and the team that you'd want to beat a little bit more. You know, if you don't pick up points against them and maybe Watford and Leeds do, all of a sudden you're right down there, and the rest of our games aren't that easy. So I think you've got to look at anyone outside the top 6-7 teams and think every single one of them is a cup final, isn't it? You know, the Southampton game, we were saying just how important that was, and to get nothing from that was disappointing. I think, especially after coming in off such a high, but I mean, it's not going to be easy. I think the fans have got to be right up for it, and you know, try and recreate the atmosphere that we've had in the previous 2 games under Lampard.
That's annoying though, isn't it? I mean, the atmosphere has been boss at times, but like, how much money do they earn a week? Like, do you know what I mean? Even if you play football at an amateur level, you've got to have a bit of heart about you. You've got to want to win. Why do these players set foot on the pitch and not care? They come off laughing and say, "Oh, you know, all right to the mate on the opposite side." Why do they not care? If they don't care, go and play for someone else because we don't want you. It really annoys me.
Yeah, I mean,
why is the crowd? I mean, the crowd should get up for it as well because we do need the points, but they've got to take some responsibility.
I completely agree. I think the difference is from the I can't remember what game it was, where with the Leeds game. Sorry, you know, where the crowd were up for it from the get go, and you're coming out to that sort of energy. What I felt in that Leeds game, because don't get me wrong, the atmosphere at Goodison's been awful for quite a long time. I think in terms of, you know, the general atmosphere, the only time we really get up for it is when there's a bad refereeing decision or, you know, a big tackle, which we temporarily get up for. I think there's been nothing to get up for, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the fans are at fault for that, but I think having that energy around the ground from kickoff really set the tone for the players in the early minutes. And then I think when the players are up for it and, you know, sort of doing the, you know, putting in a high press, winning the ball, making the opposition make mistakes, that feeds into the crowd. So I think it's sort of that. I felt like that was quite symbiotic in the Leeds game, and I think I could imagine coming out to a lethargic Goodison, a sort of Sunday early kickoff when everyone's still half in bed, and you sort of clap them out. I can see how when the game kicks off and the players can hear each other shouting, maybe not there's not the motivation to do that, but if you go into a raucous ground as an away team, you get put under pressure. Whereas if you come in and you're playing basically on the park with 40,000 people watching, I can, it's got to be a home. It's got to be a home advantage to an extent. Is essentially what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I just think they need more about themselves. But like the next two games for me, if we can win the next two games and then even beat Palace away in the cup, surely the confidence then to move into whatever game we've got next, I don't even know off the top of my head. But we know the players are lacking confidence, but something's got to change. I mean, Andy mentioned Michael Keane. I wouldn't put Michael Keane in again.
Ever.
I mean, that summed our season up, I think, last night, didn't they, when Holgate whacked him in the face with the ball.
It was the highlight of the game, to be fair.
You must have been there, surely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I know. I think if we can win these two games, then I think you can almost look forward to the FA Cup and try and get a run together. And I think the FA Cup at the minute to me just feels like a little bit of a distraction because obviously there's three big clubs waiting for us in the semi-final. By the looks of things, if the results go as expected, then it'll be a nice day out at Wembley if we do get there. But there's we've got bigger fish to fry, I think, this season. So hopefully 2 wins, focus on Wembley, and then cruise to safety. That's the ideal situation, isn't it?
Yeah, win our games in hand as well because we've still got Brentford on 28, Leeds 27, and Burnley 26. We've only played 25, so we've got at least 2 games, 3 on Brentford, and obviously we've got Brentford at home at some point as well, haven't we? So we need to take
last home game of the season, Brentford, isn't it?
Is it?
I mean, if the Leicester hasn't been rearranged or whatever, but yeah, that should be a game and a half, shouldn't it?
That'd be an interesting one, wouldn't it?
We don't want it being left till then, and we certainly don't want it being left till the last away game of the season away at the Emirates, where we haven't won for how many years?
Yeah. Oh well. Talking about cruising to safety, we've had our own. He's not our owner, but he's very closely related to our owner. His yacht's been seized in Hamburg. I know it's
that was a smooth link, that.
Thank you. Straight off the cuff. Oh, you can't buy this.
Straight off. You're well checking your notes there.
What? But yeah, so I mean, obviously there's a bigger issue and a more serious issue at play, which we've sort of addressed previously. The Usmanov thing, obviously it's not what we need at the minute. I don't think it's something that we'd ever really actively encourage, but he's inevitably linked to the club. He owns a company with the person who owns our club, and it appears he's been ploughing money into the club for the last few years through sponsorships and various other avenues. Obviously, I don't think anyone's too bothered about the fact that he's an oligarch when there's no war going on. But obviously, with what's gone on since, it's brought everything into a little bit more of a sharper focus. And I think everything, as you see with Chelsea are up for sale now. So, what do you think on the whole situation? Obviously, we've shown our support to Mykolenko both as a fan base and a club quite openly, which you would think contradicts the fact that there is a man who owns us potentially from Russia. But it just seems like a little bit of a mess to me. I don't know what you think, Dawn.
Well, Mashiri stepped down, hasn't he, off the board of the company that he owns with Usmanov. And there's been articles in the paper, but don't believe what you read. He's like pleading his innocence as an oligarch, isn't he? He's saying he wasn't one of them that could buy one of the services or whatever for like a penny. He reckons he set up a plastic bag company and made his millions from that because he didn't have plastic bags in Russia or whatever. And who knows if it's true. I think with what's going on in the world at the moment, sort of politically and from a humanity perspective, then it was the right move to just sever ties. And then if he's not an oligarch and he wants to give us loads of money in the future, well, that's a different thing. Like you, Andy.
I love that word, yeah. Yeah, I don't really know much, what he does, because I don't really take that a lot of interest in it. But I think going back to what our support for Ukrainians and Mikhailenko was just top drawer. I think we can agree we're class off the pitch with things like that. But in terms of funding with the stadium and stuff, I'm understanding that from Steve Rotherham that we've got funding elsewhere. Don't know where that elsewhere is, but so hopefully the stadium's not going to be affected too much.
We have the best ground in the championship, won't we? At this rate, so still sell it out every week.
But wasn't it one of the first stories that broke when we went to war and they were looking at the oligarchs about Everton Stadium's not going to go ahead, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, that is so Everton, isn't it?" Like, we know what else happens, and the stadium will fall because there's a bloody war in Russia.
Well, we do have a history of winning the league every season before a world war. So, although I'm not actively saying that we should go to a world war, I would like to see us win a trophy before I die. So, yeah, I mean, it's obviously not an ideal situation over there, and without venturing too far into politics, I completely agree with what you say, Andy. It's all we can do as a fan base really is carry on supporting the club and support Mikhailenko, because what he's going through is pretty tragic at the minute. You see Zinchenko crying on the pitch, and I think without obviously getting too political, it just seems quite senseless what's going on over there. So obviously we wish all the people of Ukraine the best for all of our Everton viewers in Ukraine. But yeah.
Did you see the tennis player who beat Federer, and he's now dressed up in camouflage gear over there fighting for the country? I mean, that's awesome.
It's crazy. I saw Lomachenko and Usyk and obviously the Klitschko's out there, and they have all come together, haven't they? It's just crazy. But yeah, wish them all the best, and hopefully common sense prevails with that. So obviously we touched on it before with the Newcastle Wolves game. We usually do a score prediction, Andy. I don't know if you'd like to partake or you'd like to offer any insight into how you think the game will go.
Score prediction, proof. Well, I'm going to go for a win. I'm going to go. Got to, haven't I? Can I see them not scoring? Probably not. So it'll have to be a boring 2-1 then.
I'll take a boring 2-1. What are you going for, Dawn? Anything more ambitious? How many are we going to score? Are we keeping a clean sheet? Godfrey's back, remember?
Godfrey's back.
Well, possibly.
He'll score it for them, won't he?
Hopefully as well.
Yeah.
I'd say out of the two fixtures, I know you wouldn't think so on paper, I'd think Wolves would probably be the easiest one, and I say that because Newcastle have got a bit more fight in the belly, and they're in the same position as us. Well, they're in a bit of a better position. I don't think we'll get a clean sheet. That's out the window. I usually sit pretty on 2-1, but Andy's taken that from me. So it'll be a bit more exciting. 3-1.
Wow.
3-1. Dele Alli to set up the winner. Go ahead.
So how much you? How much you throwing on that? You sound confident about that 3-1. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I think that it's going to be a tough game, isn't it? I think it's probably going to be one of those where we might come out fighting. I think we might nick a goal and then try and hang on to it. So I can see us going 5 at the back, and I think maybe we can just cling on for a clean sheet and a 1-0 at home, just grind it out. There's not much else to go off here. You've took the only 2 reasonable ones. So yeah, I'll go for a 1-0, a vintage 1-0, just like the Moyes days all over again.
Yeah.
I mean, if we scored early and we've got to hang on for the whole game, I mean, how many pints are you going to need at half time?
I'm not coming back up.
No.
Right. Anything else that you want to? Anything else you want to add? Any more optimism for the rest of the season? A little rallying call for the Evertonians.
Optimism.
Help.
Well, it's not quite a rendition of It's a Grand Old Team to play for, but we'll take it. So
it's an old team to play for.
So yeah, thank you to Dawn, thank you to Andy for joining me, and thank you to everyone for watching. I'll hopefully see you again next week, and yeah, have a good week. Up the toffees.
Mike, up the top.